Greetings all and welcome to Lucas Brews. In this video we'll be taking a look at the Airfix 1/72nd scale Mitsubishi A6M2b Zero, a kit originally released by Airfix in 2011 that has since been reissued several times, most recently being in this form in 2023. So without further ado, let's have a closer look at this kit. So, starting out with the box, the artwork on the front here is in the typical sort of modern rendered style of Airfix. I do think I prefer the Roy Cross artwork because it looks very classic, but this one's still very nice with a picturesque sort of Pacific blue ocean and all the islands, and there's a bit of action going on with some Japanese ships getting attacked by what look like perhaps army-based Dauntlesses, which I think were A24s with the olive drab. And the Zero on the front here looks really nice with some lovely details for the weathering and very nice lighting on it, so that looks pretty good. We've then got the usual titles from Airfix with the scale and the kit, with a product number of A01005B and the logo in the corner. The top of the box features a little bit of a history blurb on the Zero, talking about its success early on in the Pacific Theatre as well as in China. And we've got a profile of the included scheme, which is X183, an aircraft flown by, and excuse if I'm pronouncing this badly, but Yoshiro Hasegachi from the 3rd Naval Flying Group, which was based in Denpasar, Bali in February 1942. We've got a skill level of 1 in the corner with a Airfix Flying Hours token, which I believe you can turn in if you're a member of the Airfix Flying Club or donate to certain charities. Although in Australia, I believe the shipping costs don't really make any sense and it's a little bit hard to send them off. The sides of the box have repeats of the box art, and this one has the price tag, which I'll talk about towards the end of the video. And on the very back, we actually have our marking guide with the placement for all the decals, as well as the color codes in Humbrol, with a bit of mixing required for the nose cowling colors in particular. And although it hints at the interior green color in the wheel well there, it doesn't give a recommended color, which is a little bit of a shame, but I think it's a bit of a tricky one to match, although I have found my own personal way of doing them. We've then got the barcode and a little symbol here saying that the decals are designed by Cartograph, so you'll know they're of good quality. And we have a guide for the paints and glues that are required, although not included in the kit. The bottom of the box contains your typical warnings, as well as the address to Hornby and a recommended age of 8+. So that's pretty much it for the box. The sides open up here as is typical for a Airfix kit of this size, and we've got a plastic bag here which contains all of our parts, and there's also a set of instructions which we'll have a closer look at, and the decals on a little sheet here with a little bit of protective paper. So the instructions are a sort of A4 sheet that folds out, and the front of them contains a more detailed history about the Zero, as well as some of its specifications. And at the bottom of that, we've got the usual assembly icons from Airfix and advice. Then opening up the page, we have some more assembly instructions, which are very useful if you're just starting out. And there's no sprue map included, but luckily it's a pretty small kit. So assembly starts as is typical with the cockpit. So we've got a rear bulkhead with a seat, and you can see we've got our little color codes there, as well as identifiers for the individual part numbers. They have done a little bit of shading to help differentiate which colors are being applied where, although in color would have obviously been a little bit easier to see. We've then got the cockpit floor here, which contains a bit of detail on the side, along with the rudder pedals, and then we're adding the instrument panel and joystick, along with what look like a couple of decals there. Once that's all assembled, you can put these two parts together, and then join them inside of the fuselage halves after you've painted the sidewalls. There's a diagram here which sort of shows the alignment, which is very handy. You can see we've got some key sort of pegs to help line up the floor and fit it to the rest of the aircraft, which is very handy. And then we've got a little sub-assembly here, which appears to be our machine guns with a bit of the top front of the cowling. Over on the next page, we then have our engine assembly, which consists of 2 halves for each row of cylinders. And we've got a little dish sort of piece that gets inserted in between them, and it doesn't mention this, but I'm assuming if you don't glue it, you can obviously rotate it and it will be locked into place by the front row of cylinders and the gearbox there. Once you've assembled it, you can add it to the front of the aircraft along with that little sub-assembly from earlier. And then we've got our engine cowling here, and once you've done that, you can then work on the wings. So we've got options here to have the wings folded if you cut the wingtip off of the main halves here for the upper surface, and then there's a separate piece included with the joint there. And we've also got options here to cut out a hole and add a drop tank, or we've also got 2 holes here for the typical Airfix stands. Once you've modified the wings as you wish and glued them together, you can then join them to the underside of the fuselage, and then we've got 2 pieces for each horizontal stabilizer and a separate rudder. On the last page of the instructions here, we've then got our landing gear, which can be done in the open or closed position here. So if it's closed, pretty simple. You basically just glue these landing gear bay doors shut, along with the tail hook and the tail wheel here. Though if you want to do it with the undercarriage out, we've got a very small sort of door that goes on the outer part of each landing gear bay, and then a small one on the inner part here with a bit of detail for the sort of actuating system. We've also got a different tail wheel, but the same tail hook, so it doesn't look like you can have the tail hook extended. We've got a drop tank here, and interestingly, you've got the option to drill out a hole in the drop tank, and I guess that would mean the aircraft would be banking when it's attached to the stand, so that's an interesting option there. We've then got our landing gear assembly, which consists of the main strut here, along with the outer part of the landing gear bay door, and you've got the wheel which sort of goes in the middle there. You've got 2 for each side, obviously, and once that's been assembled, you can then add that to the underside of the wings, along with the drop tank if you're going to have it installed. We've got a bit of a diagram here for the particular angles that the wheels should be at, but looks like they're nicely keyed, so hopefully they'll fit into the correct position as they are. The last sub-assembly we have here is for the propeller, which consists of a single piece with the 3 blades, a base piece to add them to, and then a spinner which goes over the top. You can then attach that to the front sort of spinner piece here that sticks out of the gearbox. And the last details we've got are these little sort of control hinge looking things which go on the upper surface, what looks like a pitot tube, an optional pilot figure, a antenna for the radio, and we've also got a single piece canopy. So unfortunately you won't be able to have it open, but otherwise everything is pretty simple and looks quite nicely detailed. Moving on to our plastic parts, they're all contained in this bag with what looks like another bag here for our clear parts, which is good. That means they're nice and protected from getting damaged. The non-transparent sprues here are done in a sort of dark grey greenish plastic, which is a bit more typical of more modern kits. When I started out, they were sort of using a lighter grey, which was a little bit softer, and then they transitioned to another dark grey, but this one appears to be a lot more crisp than the other ones I've looked at. So I might as well start off with these sprues here, which contain our right fuselage half there, and as you can see, typical for Airfix kits of the time, there's some very nice recessed detail. All of it's pretty crisp. They've done panel lines and access hatches, and a few of the vents sort of around the engine area, although there aren't any recessed rivet details or things you'd see on more advanced kits. As for the interior detailing inside of the fuselage, we've got some nice representations of some of the sort of storage and controls here with these raised rectangular boxes, and a nice bit of framework replicated here with one of the ribs even having some nice recessed holes in it, so that looks pretty good. We've got some sort of wire and then triangular thing here, which I think is representing some electrical cable or lights or something, so a little bit crude and basic compared to some more modern kits, but still pretty decent. Various other smaller parts are also moulded on this sprue, so we've got our closed landing gear bay covers there. We've got our bulkhead here for the pilot's area with a little bit of recessed sort of hole details on that bulkhead there, but otherwise sort of just the attachment points for the seats with a few little ejector pin marks. We've got our main instrument panel here with no raised or recessed details apart from sort of raised edges for the panels, but we've got decals included for a bit more detail. Our landing gear struts here, which are very small, but have some nice little bits of detail on them. Some spots look a little bit less cleanly moulded, and I think there is a bit of a seam line on them, but they're not too bad. Our joystick, on the other hand, looks very dodgily moulded with a bit of a sort of plastic bit of flashing there, which is going to need a bit of work to clean up. But they have done a nice job with the texturing sort of on the base of the control column there. Our tail hook is pretty simple, and it's looks like it's got a little bit of a bend or some sort of dent in it, but it could just be part of the mould. The pilot here looks pretty generic and not super crisply detailed, so probably not going to end up using him, but hey, at least it's better than having no pilot at all. We've got our tiny little tail wheel here with the retracted version or the extended one with a nice little bit of detail. These look like parts of the landing gear bay sort of flaps, I think are on the inside. We've got our top part of the cowling there with some recessed details and the machine gun barrels, which don't look too bad at all. The gun sight is also molded to them, so unfortunately it's not clear, but at least it's going to be nice and solid. We've got our wheels, which have the basic sort of hub cover there. There are some raised rivets on the outer side here, but on the other side there's nothing. It's sort of just nice and smooth, although at least the edge is defined, so it should be reasonably easy to paint the rubber and the hub separately. Just above it, we've got our spinner, which is nice and cleanly molded, along with the base piece for the propeller, which has a fair bit of flash on it and is going to be a bit awkward, I reckon, to cut out, but otherwise okay. And we've got our little pin here for the propeller, which should theoretically allow it to rotate. And finally, we've got our engine cowling all the way out here by itself, which unfortunately looks like it's got a fair few imperfections on it. There's a bit of a seam line here and some flash all over the place on the front here. And I'm not sure if that's intentional, but it looks like the lines for the cow flaps there are really wonky. They've sort of got a wavy pattern and then it gets really distorted up towards the top here, so I'm suspecting that's a imperfection. Looks better on the left side, but the right side, yeah, that definitely looks a bit dodgy, so that's unfortunate. The last bits we've got on this sprue are our antenna here, which is very thin and going to be very difficult to remove without breaking. Our little pitot tube there with a bit of flash, and we've got the inside parts of the landing gear bay doors with a little bit of detail here for the moving system on them, so that looks pretty decent. Moving on to the next set of sprues, we've got our left fuselage side here with the same sort of recessed panel lines and details, which look pretty good. On the inside, we've got some slightly different cockpit details with, again, that very nice raised sort of ribbing with the recessed holes, along with a nice looking trim wheel, a control panel here with some actual raised switches and a gauge face by the looks of things, which doesn't look too bad, and a very simplified representation of, I think, the throttle controls there. We also have the lower part of the wings here with some very nicely done recessed detailing, including a few rivets on this inner panel here. We've got some raised bulges for parts of, I think, where the cannon ammunition would have been stored, along with the ejection chutes fully cut out here. A little drilled out hole here for the barrels of the 20mm in the wings. And we've got a very nice bit of detail on the inside of the landing gear bay with nice deep recesses as well as raised ribbing details, which look really great. And yeah, in general, detail is very crisp and cleanly molded. Oh, we've even got our engine exhausts here, which are fully drilled out, which look fantastic. And part of the sort of intake system, I think, for part of the oil radiator there, which looks pretty good. The inside part here also has a few holes here for where you can drill out to fit the fuel tank and the stand. I think if you're going to put the drop tank on but still want it to be displayed on a flight stand, you'd be better going with the holes on the drop tank because they're very, very close to each other, and I'd suspect you wouldn't be able to fit it around the tank anyways. We've then got our two cylinder halves here, which have some very nice recessed details and raised ones for the cylinder heads, with the front part here containing our gearbox, which is pretty nice and crisply done. They are very closely molded, especially this one to the sprues there, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge to remove, but hopefully not too bad. We've got our optional folded wing tips here, which don't look too bad at all, again with nice recessed detailing. No real interior framework details on the inside though, just these sort of notches to line them up. And then we've also got these little spikes here, which I think are like the control joints for the upper surface of the wings. The open landing gear bay option here with some raised ribbing details to help line it up. There is a ejector pin mark which might be slightly visible, but you're probably not going to see too much of it anyways with the wheels on top. And finally, we've got the basic sort of details here of the machine guns that would be inside of the cockpit. The last set of sprues we've got here that aren't clear includes the upper surface for the wings, which again features some very nice recessed details. We've also got raised ones here for the fabric ailerons there. There isn't any sort of divot, I don't think, or sort of fabric texture. It's sort of just a couple of vague sort of raised lines here, which doesn't look too bad. It's replicated on the underside here as well, with a little bit more of a divot, perhaps. And it looks like the flaps and the inner side, or the underside of the outer wingtip are molded to the top ones here. Again, we've got holes for the 20mm as well as the pitot tube molded in, which is good. And as for the other smaller parts we've got here, we've got the rudder here, which has the same sort of raised texturing for the fabric, but no sort of divots. It looks like there might be some slight imperfections with a bit of a sort of wavy sag on them, but otherwise they look okay. Same story with the horizontal stabilizers. There's sort of a basic raised soft fabric texturing to them, but no recesses. And the rest of the details are nicely done recessed panel lines. The cockpit floor here has some nice raised ribbing and controls, including the rudder pedals there, which don't look too bad. And then we've got our drop tanks here, which look pretty good. There's sort of a raised line here, which is a little bit softly molded, but doesn't look too bad. Our seat here actually has some recessed holes drilled into it, although they are a little bit basic. And then finally we've got our propeller blades, and unfortunately it looks like one of the props has actually been damaged, as it's got a little bit of a bend to it. And yeah, that doesn't quite look like it lines up correctly. Not sure how that's happened, because the sprues do have a little bit of a guard on the outside here, but perhaps it's just gotten unlucky and gone caught. So yeah, that's a little bit of a shame, but otherwise everything on this sprue looks pretty good. Our single clear part has its own bag, as mentioned previously, and of course it's only the canopy. So yeah, the quality on it looks pretty good. There is a fair bit of distortion, being quite a curved shape, but fortunately the plastic isn't too thick, and it's very, very shiny, and there's no scratches or imperfections on the surface, which is fantastic. They've done a nice job, I think, replicating the raised panel work, and they've even done a raised bulge here for the area where the front part of the canopy is, where it would fit over the top of the rear section when opened, so that looks pretty nice. Again, it's a bit of a shame they didn't include the option to have the canopy open, but still not too bad. Lastly, in this kit, we of course have our decals here, which are done by Cartograph, so they're going to be of very good quality. They look really nice, and the detail on them is superb, with a lot of fine features, like these little sort of serial numbers and things for the controls. The walkway markings look really good, and it looks like there's sort of a full clear film there, so there is a chance they'll silver, but you could probably trim the inside there, or make sure you've got a good gloss coat down and they'll be okay. The instrument dials look really fantastic, and I like that they haven't done any of the colour on the backing, so whatever colour you paint the cockpit, they'll blend into really nicely. I didn't notice until now, but the markings for the tail are actually separated to where the rudder is, so if you've got it posed, they won't have any issues, which is fantastic. And yeah, absolutely fantastic quality, and the details look really nice. It would have been great to have another option in terms of schemes included in this kit, but you can always go aftermarket, and of course Airfix tend to reissue kits regularly with different markings as well, so you can keep your eye out if you want a different scheme to what's included. So that wraps up my look at the Mitsubishi A6M2b Zero from Airfix. Apart from the issues with the engine cowling and the propeller blades, generally this is a pretty good quality little kit with some nice details here and there, and definitely a good little one for beginners. Generally it retails for around about 20 to 15 AUD depending on where you get it, and typical for Airfix kits in Australia, I think availability is a bit patchy. Since I picked this one up from the Queensland Air Museum, where I'm a volunteer and a member, I got a 25% discount on this one, so a very nice, reasonable price for this little kit. This is actually one of several Zero kits I've picked up and had donated for my Milne Bay project, so I'll be doing some inbox reviews and build videos on other ones as well, and most likely converting this one to the A6M3 Hamp with the clipped wings. Though it won't actually be the first time I've done this kit, as I've done it a few times over my career, including this much earlier example, which was from the Pearl Harbor 70th anniversary set. So I'm very much looking forward to redoing this kit, doing a bit of converting to it, and obviously approaching it with a lot more experience and some much better tools and techniques. Thank you very much for watching this inbox review. I do hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't, so you don't miss any future videos. Feel free to leave your thoughts on this kit in the comments below, and if you've had any experiences building it, both good and bad. And a massive thank you, of course, to my wonderful patrons for helping me to fund not only buying this kit, but also helping fund some of my other projects and the time I spend making these videos, the products I use on my finished models, and for donating some of the Zeros, which we'll be having a look at in future videos. That's it for now, but until the next one, as always, take care and model on.